Hello there my fellow gamers, it's Alex here for Notebook Check Reviews, and this fancy looking notebook is Asus's latest addition to their 2023 lineup, the Zephyrus M16. While it may look very similar to last year's model, the keen eye will notice some subtle differences to the overall chassis. And of course ROG also updated the core components quite significantly. That said, the M16 has also gotten quite a bit more expensive, and our review unit can be yours for a casual investment of a little over 5,000 euros. If the beefy 4090, Intel's 13th gen i9 and a gorgeous QHD mini LED panel will at least somehow make this price tag justified, we will tell you in our review. Our review unit is equipped with an Intel i9-13900H, and while the HX CPUs we tested already offered quite the speed bump compared to last year's generation, the H CPUs didn't quite get the same performance overhaul, but more on that later. Most of you guys will probably be more interested in the graphics side of things anyways, and ROG really put Nvidia's Ada mobile flagship in this one. While they also managed to increase the power budget for the GPU to about 145 watts, it will be very interesting to see how the RTX 4090 fares against its beefier 175 watt siblings we have tested so far. 32 gigs of DDR5 memory and a 2TB NVMe SSD are completing the spec sheet for our M16. Before we get to performance, let's talk a bit more about the chassis. The ROG is very well made and the magnesium body rarely picks up any fingerprints, despite its matte black color. The base is very resistant and barely flexes at all. The display lid on the other hand could have been a bit more stiffer in our opinion. Speaking of the lid, Asus also added their enemy matrix LEDs to the M16. They have only been offered in the G14 last year, and while I still think they are very gimmicky, I must admit they look quite cool. And they offer a unique way to personalize your machine. And of course, if you don't like it, you can simply turn it off. In terms of ports, the new M16 comes with a different arrangement, and unfortunately we lost the network check in the process. While the majority of connectors in last year's model was placed on the left side of the 16-incher, it's a bit more evenly distributed this time around. On the left you can find a single USB-A 3.2 Gen 2, USB-C Thunderbolt 4 and HDMI 2.1 as well as the power connector. On the right, ROG added another USB-A, the second USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 and a microSD card reader. Both USB-Cs support power delivery, and in our configuration they even included a very compact 100 watt USB-C charger. In the maintenance department, the Zephyrus offers everything we would expect from a high-end performance notebook, and after taking off the bottom plate you got access to a pair of SODIMMs and NVMe slots. The Wi-Fi card can be swapped or repaired easily as well. In terms of inputs, the ROG offers a decent keyboard and trackpad alike. The keys might feel a little soft for some, and for me personally the pressure point could be a bit clearer, but overall you will probably get used to this one pretty quickly. The trackpad also offered no reason to complain during our testing and worked without any issues. One of the big new changes for the 2023 Zephyrus M16 is its display. The 16-inch QHD Plus screen had its refresh rate bumped up to 240 Hz. And it is also mini LED backlit this time around. It is very similar to the display found in the Flow X16 we tested last year, but Asus was able to almost double the dimming zones to further mitigate any haloing you might have encountered. In SDR we got average brightness numbers around 600 nits, which makes this display even usable outdoors, and contrast is also pretty mind-blowing, with only OLEDs being able to compete in this regard. That said, the 630 nits maximum we measured is quite far away from the advertised 1000 nits, and brightness distribution could also be a bit better overall. Color reproduction and color gamut coverage on the other hand leaves nothing to be desired, and with an average delta E of 1.2 from the factory, you can even use the M16 for color critical work without the need for manual calibration. Alright my fellow video game enthusiasts, let's talk performance. While the other 4090 equipped laptops we tested so far have been equipped with Intel's HX CPUs, the ROG M16 has to make do with a regular 13900H. Unfortunately, this means that you should not expect too much from the chip compared to its direct predecessor, since it's basically just a refresh with some slightly higher boost clocks. So yes, it's the fastest H series CPU we have tested so far, but not by a lot. So if you really need the fastest silicon for CPU heavy workflows, you might want to look into a laptop that comes with a beefy HX variant. Overall system performance was very snappy though, and in general the argument can be made once again if you really need a faster CPU. That said, while we haven't tested an i7-13700H yet, we are pretty confident that it will perform along the same lines as the i9, making the added cost for the higher end chip hard to justify. The SSD in the M16 on the other hand offers no reason to complain and performs with fast and super stable transfers. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the GPU in here. Is it worth it to spend the extra cash for an upgrade over the 4080? We are still very early into our reviews for different variants of the new graphics chips. And this is actually the first 4090 we have in the studio that doesn't run at 175 watts, but rather at up to 145. And it seems like the mobile flagship might be better paired with a thicker chassis, higher power levels and an HX CPU. That said, in synthetics, the 4090 just slays even the fastest 3080 Ti with a very comfortable 30% lead. But it also sits quite a bit below the 4090 in the XMG Neo 16 and just barely above the 4080 in the newest Razer Blade 16. But in all fairness, the 4080 was running at 175 watts and was also paired with an HX Intel chip. So, as it has been with the 30 series, you cannot judge a GPU's performance by the name alone, but wattage and CPU pairing do play a huge role and will decide if you get your money's worth. We will get a lot more devices with new core components over the coming weeks, and I'm sure that will paint a much clearer picture about what to expect from a given GPU at certain wattages. So please be sure to subscribe so you do not miss any of our upcoming reviews. Content creators upgrading from a 3080 will be very pleased with the uplift in performance, even though once again the M16 performs on par with the 4080 equipped Razer Blade. Regarding real-world gaming performance, you will definitely have fun with the M16. But again, you are sometimes quite far away from what the 4090 can give you theoretically. But if you compare frame rates to what was possible last year, well, you can easily add a solid 25% more performance to even the fastest RTX 3080 Ti's. In raw rasterization render performance, there aren't a lot of games that dip below 60 FPS, even in 4K. And in the display's native QHD resolution, you can enjoy super smooth frame rates no matter what. Dropping things down to full HD and you can enjoy the competitive advantage even in the highest possible settings. If you want to enjoy your games with all the eye candy there is, and that means ray tracing mostly nowadays, the 4090 delivers as well. I tested a few games with full RT settings in the display's native QHD Plus resolution, and I was able to get things to almost 60 FPS in most titles as well, even though I had to rely on DLSS in the quality setting this time around. Turning on frame generation in supported titles gives you a very solid bump on top. And this tech will also help you tremendously if you want to hook up the M16 to a 4K screen or as a console to your high-res TV. As I said earlier, ROG increased the power limits this year quite significantly, especially for the GPU. And while the new RTX 4000 mobile cards made considerable improvements in efficiency, physics still exist. So if you want to let the M16 run at full speed, you will get your fair share of fan noise in return. It's not unbearable, but you might want to have your headphones close by. We took some noise samples in different scenarios and in both the ROG's performance and turbo settings, so you can get an idea of what to expect. And please be sure to stay tuned for our written review if you are interested in our standard measured dB numbers as well as our standard battery tests. Unfortunately, I ran a little bit out of time testing too many games with this one. Alright my friends, it's time to wrap it up. And I think it really comes down to answering one question. Is the Asus ROG Zephyrus M16 worth its crazy asking price? I would say it's not, at least not in this configuration. While I really like the chassis itself, the overall port selection and this guy's display, its core components do feel a little bit like a letdown, especially since we know what the 4090 is actually capable of. So while the big ADA GPU will not leave you wanting for anything right now in terms of performance, going for the 4080 SKU might be the more reasonable thing to do. Unless you really need the extra Nvidia memory and got some cash to burn. While we have no idea how the 4070s will perform this year, yet, those models might also be a decent option for your next gaming laptop. But in those you would also have to do without the mini LED panel, which would be very hard to swallow, at least for me personally. So all in all, the M16 is a very good gaming laptop that is mostly doing everything right and hardly offers real reasons to complain. But with almost everything that has come out in the tech world this year, this performance and gaming experience comes at a very steep asking price that only a select few might be able to afford. But please guys, let us know what you think about the M16 in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe consider liking the video if you think we are doing a good job here. That would be it for today. Thanks a ton for watching. My name is Alex, you have been fantastic, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.